computer. So welcome to the Phenomenal Feminine Rekindled Summit. It is a pleasure today to have the amazing wise woman who I call Caroline. Her name is Caroline Purvey. Caroline, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Really excited to be joining you, Bolutiwi.
I am very excited too. Now, everybody, I get to tell you who Caroline is, and she is absolutely formidable. So Caroline happens to be a #1 best-selling author of her book called Feel It to Heal It. She's actually an international speaker. She's the CEO and founder of TRE UK. TRE stands for Total Release Experience, and she'll tell you all about that. This is a program that she has created. It's a unique program to empower those looking for freedom from unnecessary suffering. And I think we can all put our hands up if we in that category. Now, Caroline has actually been voted in the top 10 women to watch in well-being, and her online courses reach clients worldwide, and they have a very specific appeal, which is they don't need all the talk that usually comes with various forms of therapy. She has actually supported this marvelous woman, over 4,000 challenged children in Africa, to release from their trauma, and now they can go on to lead happier, healthier, more empowered lives. Now, she's very excited about us discovering more about the power that we have in our own bodies and how we can actually release stress, overwhelm, and trauma where conventional practices have failed. I cannot wait for her to actually start sharing this. I also want to add that Caroline is a mother, she's a wife, and she's an avid runner. So Caroline, where do I start? Well, all I'm going to say now is there's a saying that says it's good to talk, and I think it's good to talk. However, I'm sure you would say it's good to shake. But before I come back to that, what I'd like to share is that I'm sure you'd agree that stress, which you are an expert at helping people release, is a silent killer. And I just want to share something with the ladies here, just in case anybody didn't know. Now, did you know, phenomenal women, that emotional stress is a major contributing factor to 6 leading causes of death in the United States? Cancer, coronary heart disease, accidental injuries, respiratory disorders, cirrhosis of the liver, and even suicide. Now, to any high-achieving woman who actually has a big vision and has had her share of challenges, I'm sure that all of us would love a way to release stress without years of sitting on anybody's couch. Caroline, I would like to ask you to share some light on the impact of stress on our bodies in your experience.
Wow, Bolutiwi, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And let me just say I'm a grandmother as well, and that's important.
Very important.
Because, reaching out to children is phenomenal too. So stress impacts every system of our body, every system. And why? Because it's all to do with a muscle in our body that we're very, very unaware of. And that's the psoas muscle. And for anyone listening, this is P-S-O-A-S, pronounced psoas. And this muscle holds our upper body to our lower body. It's in our back body behind all our organs, which is why we cannot access it, or nobody else can access it. We're not even aware that it's there. But fundamentally, this muscle is our fight-flight center. It's where we hold fears and emotions. And coming back to what you said about breathing problems, it's attached to our diaphragm. And because it's attachment to the diaphragm, you can imagine that every time you go through some stressful, overwhelming, traumatic experience, that initial moment of whatever it is you're going to deal with, there's like a flinch. And actually, we all flinch the day we're born, because we come out from this tiny little wrapped up bundle in the warmth and the dark and the coziness. And then all of a sudden we're thrust into the world outside that's got lights, it's got voices and sounds, and we get a slap on the bottom and there we are. No wonder we start to cry. But there's that startle response. And I'm sure we've all seen that in babies if we've been, gifted to give birth. But that baby's then wrapped up and hopefully in most cases given to mum, and loving kindness is supporting it. It's not the case for every baby, sad to say. But every time we flinch and we draw tension into our body, it's in that psoas that it goes. So it's a little bit like tightening guy ropes on a tent. So you can imagine, all of the organs of our body are just trundling away. What is wonderful about the human body is we sit here, we're breathing, our heart's pumping. How many are actually taking any notice of that, or do take any notice of that? Actually, the notice is taken when those systems go wrong. And then it's either we cannot function at optimum level, or at worst, it's game over. And releasing tension from the psoas is key to survival as well. Because what happens, and I'm going to switch the language because it's so easy for everyone. You've got that psoas muscle, but imagine that is a stress bucket. And psychologists talked about stress buckets back in the 70s. But we take that concept seriously, and it doesn't matter who we talk to. Adults can talk to children about stress buckets. We talk to professors, we talk to therapists and counsellors and doctors, and they all get it. Doesn't matter. Keep it simple, and then we can make the whole concept simple, like breathing, like heart. Why should it be complex? But actually it's serious, because like breathing, like heart, if we don't look after those systems, we're in trouble. So our bucket fills with our history. And the wonderful thing is every individual has their own life and their own history. And that's what makes us so unique. So the bucket is filled with layers and layers of different history, and a lot of it we may not remember. But what happens to the body is what happens the fuller that bucket gets. And we know when our bucket starts to fill, because there's a little knock knock saying, hello, are you listening to me? You've got some back pain going on here that keeps recurring. Hip, neck, shoulder pain, gut problems, breathing issues, lack of concentration, focus. And then there's anxiety, panic attacks, depression. And as you say, high blood pressure leads to stroke, heart conditions, heart attack, cancer, and suicide. And I really do not like that word suicide. Nobody ever wants to take their own life. But when we look at the life of somebody that took their own life, their bucket's so full, they got no mechanism to cope, they don't see a way out, and they give up hope. That's it. We've seen on the news these 3 fathers in COVID, they lost their own beautiful daughters, young lives, ready to live life, but they couldn't cope with the situation. And sadly, didn't see a way out. And yet when we release from our body and that tension goes, that is just one step away from ever going over the edge.
I love what you just said, Caroline. That's really powerful, because you said so many beautiful things. So the first thing is that when we talk about this pain and suffering, by no means should we ever imagine that it's only physical. That's the first thing.
Right.
And as you just said, we are living in very interesting times. And as a high achieving woman, we probably have a lot on our plates, right? And who knows what we've experienced over the last year and a half, the challenges that face us, the kind of vision we have for our businesses, the kind of fear we're holding our bodies. And you also said something, which was that these issues we may not even be conscious of. right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
And which is why what you do is extremely powerful, because if you're not conscious of it, you can't really talk about it, right? That's not even an option, right? And what you also said, which is very important, is because we go through life with little stresses and bigger stresses. But what I heard you say was these stresses, each one adding to the bucket, is actually putting pressure on our systems, physical, mental, emotional, right? And I'm not hearing you say those stressors were going to disappear. I'm hearing you say that there is a system that is so simple, even children can use it, that everybody can apply, which is just a gift. Because, you know, life can be complex enough. We don't need another complexity, right? So I'm going to jump right in there and ask you, Caroline, everybody's experienced stress, right? Either childhood, either in our adult lives, it goes on and on. What is the total release experience exactly? And how does that help me, any woman who has a lot on her plate, who feels like she's burning out instead of shining bright? How does that help her? And I'm going to allow you share that image that you have. Basically empty that bucket, and I'll let you
And
share.
shine the diamond. You know, yes, we have another simple analogy. We love visuals. And I say that every baby that comes into the world, there's a little diamond in there waiting to shine. Now, diamonds, did you know, when they're first formed, they are black. And it's pressure that shines them. Now, we come into the world and our diamond's black, and it's the love and the support and the opportunities and the challenges that come in a, you know, your loving family environment that you're given all the way through. And then more and more, you know, the child grows up and it might become, you know, just that amazing adult. But unfortunately, life isn't like that for everyone. Some babies are born into abandonment, to neglect, into medical intervention, so on and so forth. And we've worked with those who've never, couldn't even imagine what a diamond in themselves, who they really are. And that's what the diamond's about, is who are you really? Everyone's born with a purpose, but if we can never have that opportunity to discover our purpose, then what's life all about? And it's as simple as emptying that bucket that shines a diamond. So what is the total release experience? Well, it totally works on all 6 areas of our well-being. The New York Institute highlights 6 key areas, and that includes everything from spiritual, physical, intellectual, so on and so forth. The release is healing from the past, literally. Delayering that tension from the body. And then the experience ensures that we never go through that again, that we build resilience. Because when we know what we know, I'm coming back to something you said at the beginning, and it's something that I used to say when I used to do workshops. Stress is a silent killer. Well, I'm sorry, I've changed my tune on that one. We as human beings are slowly killing ourselves because we are totally ignoring what's going on in our body. And when we start to experience anything, what do we do in terms of bucket management? Ignore it? Well, we work in the service sector, tough guys that take on other people's trauma, whether that's fire, police, prison, military. And that slowly cooks and leads to burnout because they grow the bucket bigger than the problem. And I guess if I look back on my history, I was a tough bucket. I used to look after everybody else, would never show any sign of weakness. It was pick yourself up, dust yourself off, crack on, and that's it. And there are still many, many out there that are like that. Then there's the wave the magic wand. Lotions, potions, pills, sprays, give it me, make me better. And I have on good authority from one leading trauma psychologist, Professor Gordon Turnbull, the first thing he ever said to me, She cannot get it out the body by talking. And that was always resonated with me. And he wrote the foreword of my book, which means he totally gets what he said all those years ago, which is wonderful. If you've got deep pockets, and not everybody has, you know, it might be a retreat on Bali shores and hope that you come back and leave your bucket full on the shores in Bali, but actually, no, you might skim the top off and bring them back, but you bring everything back with you. And then, of course, something that leads to another problem that directly comes from stress, overwhelm, or trauma. We self-medicate. We have a tough day. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'll have that little glass of wine. Now I feel a bit better. Maybe chocolate cake, maybe pizzas. The food is always the wrong stuff. Maybe at worst, it's drugs. It might be gambling, over-exercise, technology, any OCD behavior. But what's happening is the dopamine impact from taking whatever it is that gives you that feel good for a short while wears off. So we want some more. And then we'll have some more. And before we know it, there's an addiction to deal with. And the joy of releasing tension from the body, it gets rid of the cause. And as a result, no need for the addiction.
Wow. I just need to jump in there because that's powerful. So what I'm hearing you say is that with total release, first of all, it's not management of symptoms. Is root cause, root level release, which is very powerful. Second of all, and very important, you don't have to go to the shores of Bali, and I'd love to go to Bali. I mean, why not? I don't think you're against traveling, but with our hectic schedules, we may not be able to do that as regularly as is required for the level of stresses we are dealing with. And another very important thing that you mentioned was that actually all these, the way in which we now cope with it, and it could be therapy, it could be chocolate cake, it could be sport, it could be all kinds of things, basically could become an addiction in itself. Wow, that is very powerful. So you basically replace one problem with another. It may look better, but you know. Now, Caroline, tell me something, because as you can imagine, many high power professionals or entrepreneurs, it could be firefighters, it could be CEOs, it could be visionary movement builders. Some of them may be rather worried about vulnerability. Feelings could be a dirty word. Ooh, feelings. Don't have time for that. That's for sissies. You know, like, ooh. And I mean, I'm speaking from my personal experience. There's a time when I would be very comfortable to think something that was not a problem. But if you ask me how I felt, what do you mean? Like literally, what do you mean? So why do you say, Caroline, you've got to feel it to heal it? And what do you mean by feeling it?
Yes, that's a great question. The program itself is so simple. And I often say I could get a 10-year-old to show you how to activate your psoas to release. But that's not where the real power is. The power is in the processing following a release session. So basically, like animals, let me just put this into context, because look, we are animals. As Attenborough says, we're animals in clothing. If a lion chases a zebra, I'm sure we can all imagine that image. And I've worked with some that have literally seen that happen. But the lion chases the zebra runs and runs, gets free of the predator, and he does one thing before he eats grass, and it can happen 10 times in a day in the wild. He has a shake and a tremor. And any of you with dogs, I'm sure you've seen dogs shake. Now, human beings tremor innately after an event, but sadly, it's been suppressed in us. Every time I ask the question of an adult, doesn't matter who they are, you know what? if a child walked into your space and it was crying, it was upset, it was frightened, and it was shaking, what would you do? And they all give me the same response. Well, give it a hug. And that's exactly why our bodies have stopped doing what they're innately meant to do. And it's a bit like that feeling of somebody walking over your grave, that little shiver that's not in your control. Some women say that they've experienced that shaking directly after childbirth. But because we have lost true understanding of what's inside our skin, you know, often it's all just skin deep. What we can see is what we think is important. But actually, it's what is deep inside that's important. You know, we live in our body. It is our temple. I'm sure we've all heard that. And we need to look after it and to keep it free of tension, because every negative thought we have gets embodied in the body's muscle memory. So we're like coiled springs and we don't even notice. And, you know, one of the things here is when that bucket gets so full, the body's got nowhere to store this. This is why there's so many in pain clinic that nobody's got an answer for. This is why we have such a spread of fibromyalgia. And I met somebody that I hadn't seen for years at a funeral last week, and I asked him what he was doing. He was no older than my own son. And he said, well, I only work part-time because my wife's ill. And I said, what's the matter? He said, fibromyalgia. And I said, is she a history of stress and trauma? And he went, I said, look, discreetly, here's my card. You need to call me. All these dreadful conditions, and that's why we talk about unnecessary suffering, the physical, the mental, the emotional. So when one heals, and the body's got its own innate intelligence, so we can lay on the floor and get our headspace out of the way, and the body starts to vibrate, which is wonderful. The amazing expressions I've had, and men have been the best at it, although they're not generally known as the species of words, are they? But when a man says, wow, you know, I feel like a door had been pushed open and I could walk through it. I felt like a bouncy castle that had just been deflated. Or it just felt like a load of butterflies were leaving my body. You know, it's different for everyone. But when people sit up afterwards and say, I feel joyful, I feel at peace, I feel empty, and these are not words that we generally would use. To feel empty, I mean, for most, has that ever been experienced? One has to meditate for hours and be very good at it to get a sense of emptiness. Whereas when the body starts to get rid of tension and the nervous system can recalibrate, and that is where the processing is. To feel it, to heal it, we release our blocked memories. And our body remembers far more. When a man says to me, I saw myself at 6 months old in my mother's arms, I felt her rejection. I said, well, isn't that wonderful? Now you know the truth. And this is about getting to our truth. What really happened all those years ago that made me believe or think or do what I do today as a woman? And I said to him, now you have to think, what filled your mum's bucket? Maybe she was raped. Maybe she was left holding the baby. And so it was nothing to do with you. You were just a baby. And yet you'd carried that all your life without knowing what the cause was. So whatever memories surface, the body's got a wonderful way of revealing them. Feelings come up that we have no control over, but they're deep held feelings. Fear, anger, grief, sadness, hurt, hate. And many of those feelings can be suppressed as a child because children freeze. You know, we have that tonic freeze, then it's fight, flight. Children cannot run away. They cannot fight in an adult world. And so they freeze, they block. And that's why those feelings could get stuck. But in the program, we support, we guide the release sessions through a guided audio of 9 years of my experience working with thousands. I've pitched spot on. And when somebody says, you know, I released, it was quite frightening, but I felt safe and supported, like you were there with me. And that is important.
I love that, Caroline. My goodness, you've just dropped so many nuggets. So first of all, what I'm hearing is that it's not only the physical release of the psoas level is important. Like you just said, dear, do that. So this is not just some woo-woo thing. This is based on evolution, which is important to say. So that's the first point. So it works. The second thing that you've said is that as the processing of the feelings, as the physical body is cooperating in that moment, exactly what is truly leading to the healing, because they're no longer stuck in your body, they can then be released. But what you said, just lastly, is that this is not just going to the marketplace and shouting, no, 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 this has been in a very safe environment, which allows the toughest of cookies to let go and allow the process happen, which is really beautiful. And you kept mentioning men. I don't know whether you were conscious of it, but what I loved about it is that as a high achieving woman, I see women as leaders. And high achieving women are definitely leaders. And when I say leaders, it doesn't have to be in terms of building a business or curating a career. That's great. But I mean, just being on this earth, we are shifting everyone and everything around us. And so if this is a tool that works for us, then we can definitely enroll our partners and our children to also benefit from it. So it's great that you've grounded it as not only something for phenomenal women, but for the whole family, for the whole world, right? That's very important. Wow, that was really, really powerful. And you kept mentioning childhood. So, and I know this tool is not only for childhood trauma. I know it could be something that happened that irritated you a lot yesterday, and you can just get down and shake. That I know is definitely possible. I use the tool myself. But what I wanted to find out from you, and I love the compassion that you talked about, because you said, yes, you may remember that somebody did something or you felt a certain way because of somebody's reaction. But your perspective, Caroline, is extremely compassionate and extremely empowering. Number one, what was in their bucket? Number two, don't take it personally. So, quick question. And so that we can all be compassionate with ourselves and others, how do adverse childhood experiences and traumas really affect and show up in our lives?
That is, excellent. The adults that we work with, many, as they get older, start to notice sensations in their body, glimpses of memories, but perhaps not making any sense. And the memories, when they start to surface, are often childhood related. A child toughens up, goes through those teenage years, maybe leaves home, gets away from the perpetrators. And sadly, one of the things that's cropped up a lot is narcissism. And the number of adults that have had controlling parents, and they've lived with it, but it's not until they've got older that they've realized the true impact on who they are, their limited beliefs. They lose their voice. They haven't got the confidence. And the joy of doing the program and getting rid of those layers, we find forgiveness. Even if we don't want to forgive, we just kind of move on from it. We find peace in the situation. So we're no longer, therefore, carrying that bucket of history around that's dragging us down. And what's wonderful is when the headspace is clear, and the heart's at peace, and the voice comes. and the voice of confidence. And anyone out there that's an entrepreneur, that's running their own business, how important is it that you find your voice? How important is it that your head's not full of yesteryear? It's present without any challenge. And yes, many have a beautiful life and they've had everything. It might just be work pressure. Doesn't matter how good you feel, you don't know how much better you can feel. And they're the words of a lady that came to me that thought she was in a tip-top condition. And it was like, wow, because we mustn't lose sight of, okay, I'm sitting here and I feel great today, but what were you like yesterday? And what are you going to feel like tomorrow? How about feeling great every day, that everything washes over, that it doesn't matter how much you've got piled up in front of you, you know that actually some of that can wait. Or I know how to prioritize what I've got to do today, and I'm going to do what's important. And that's a great way to work, because we're all under pressure. But if we let that pressure take a hold and we start to feel the knot in the stomach, and then we find, you know what, give me a glass of wine or give me a box of chocolates, I just need something right now, it's not the way to go. There is a better way, and we all have the answer. You know, the world is falling apart, Bolutiwi. The world is falling apart, even those that are supposedly looking after us. And there's not enough wonderful therapists and counsellors and doctors to go around. And if healing was down to hugging a tree, there's not enough trees for everybody. If eating an apple a day was the solution, there's not enough apples. But we all have a psoas muscle. And if we only opened our mind and just thought, you know what, if I've got this muscle and I'm the only one that can access it, what's the worst thing that can happen if I do? And actually, what's the best?
I love that, Caroline. You know, you're so right. And what you've done is you've really framed it in a way where it's empowering. I don't depend on an apple. I don't depend on a tree. I don't depend on a doctor. I don't depend on my therapist. I don't depend even on my coach or whoever. I have a psoas muscle. I can get down on the floor and I can release, like mammals have been doing for millennia, basically, which is so important. And it's all about me finding that time and saying I'm worthy of that time, the few minutes it takes to do so. And I love how you said that it's not only about somebody who's down in the dumps and suffering, and there are many people who are there, many people are burning out or have burnt out and know what that is like. But you may feel wonderful, but this is for phenomenal women. This is for women who have a big vision. This is for women who definitely cannot put their hands up and say with integrity, they've done everything they want to do in this life, right? And so to use this as one of the tools to keep pushing, to keep shining that diamond, right? Getting clearer and clearer. I mean, wow, how beautiful. And I also love your approach, Caroline, because I've read your book. And I know you're not saying, oh, only shake and that's fine. I know you're somebody who definitely encourages people to eat healthy, right? To exercise as well. It's part of a holistic system, is what I understand you to say. But this is one thing you can do on your own, almost wherever you are, and also with loved ones. Even better.
Yes, yeah. I mean, getting to children, breaking the chains for children so they don't carry their parents, guardians' baggage into their adult life, because that is often what happens. We get conditioned as children. And so, you know, if we're told to be quiet, we've got nothing to say, we be quiet and we're quiet for the rest of our life because we've got nothing to say. That happened to me when a singing teacher at the age of 8 said, you're tone deaf, don't sing. And I never did. Now I go and make a noise, whether it's singing or not, but I'm not conscious about it. But we don't realize just how much influence an adult has on a child. And this is the greatest parenting tool. If we have children, we cannot protect them from stress or trauma, because it's going to happen if, as they grow up in their different situations. It can happen behind our back, it can happen down the street, going to school, and we can't be there. But what we can gift them is the tool that they can do, so that as they grow up, it's innate. Children get things without all the complicated explanations. You know, they understand stress bucket easily enough, and we can teach them how to love their bucket, because bucket love's important.
I love that, because what you're saying is actually using this tool, releasing the stress and tension that we keep in our bodies, even without necessarily being aware of it, helps us magnify our essence, be more of who we truly are. And I'm all about magnifying one's essence, as you know. And so, Carol, I want to ask you a question. Can you tell me, or share, of course, anonymously, because I know you're all about privacy with your clients, one very powerful experience that one of your clients has had, and how the total release experience that you created has helped that person?
Well, you put me on the spot, because I've got so many stories.
I know.
Get me started on stories, which is why I wrote the book. They were never mine to sit on. I'm going to share two brief stories. One lady got in touch, recommendation of her doctor, and she said, can I come to your workshop? The doctor suggested I called you. She said, but I'm in a wheelchair. And I said, what put you in the wheelchair? She said, I had to jump from the top floor of a burning building. My sister was murdered. And I said, you come to the workshop. Because whatever people have been through, if it's trauma related, then we can find a way. And we certainly did find a way. She couldn't lie on the floor, but with Daniel, my son, we worked together. We got her to the floor and we managed to get her shaking. Well, she very quickly overcame her grief. She started to move forward, and physically, she had never felt better. Another lady, she was in tears at the end of her session, because emotions come up. And she said, I saw images. I was 2 years old and I was at my grandfather's and he was looking after me while the family went out. She said, but my finger got chopped off. She said, but it wasn't about the finger. She said, what I saw was all my family coming back and berating my granddad. And she'd wondered why she'd never had a relationship with him. Now she understands. And she found peace with that. And I wonder, you know, how many others have that relationship or non-relationship with elders, that maybe somebody else, like this granddad, there was an accident and he was so afraid of looking after her again and something else happening, he couldn't do it. And I think to find that peace in your life and that understanding of what's happened. And when diamonds come out to shine and one completely changes their career or goes into doing something for themselves because they've suddenly got that intuitive self-belief, I can do this. And coming back to what you were saying about therapies, anyone that is in their own business doing alternatives, and there's plenty of very good people out there doing that. A coach said to me once, I wish all my clients did your program, I would get far more from them. And so they would, because when those memories come up, it's like, right, okay. So now I get that. Now I'm not blocked by that anymore. I don't know what direction to take next. And you know, that is great. The same for trauma or clinical psychologists. When the issues come up, take the right advice and guidance from the right therapist. You know, if one's got fibromyalgia and deep, tense body, of course there's a place for massage. But I was talking to one of my clients earlier, and she said she'd done all these wonderful things at the weekend, not because she needed it to stress release, because she's done that. She's doing it with emptying her bucket, but to enjoy the sheer pleasure of somebody touching and giving that extra TLC without that desperate hope that I hope this gets rid of and I haven't got to come back again next week. Do you understand there? Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Does it make sense, Carolyn? My goodness, it's so powerful what you've said. What I've heard you say is that you're not one of those people saying, oh, this is my tool and that's the only thing to do and drop everything else. No, you're a wise woman, you wouldn't say so. You're saying this is a powerful pillar of powerful part of your health, exercise, routine, approach. And that even other people who are also supporting people with their health could benefit by using this tool as well. That's powerful. And also, it's also about the joy and pleasure of an experience, isn't it? We mustn't forget that. High achieving women are usually often about, the results and that's it. But no, life is more than that, right? There's the being part of it. How are you being? And that's really powerful, what you just said. And I love that, I mentioned earlier, if you can get on the floor, but even a person in a wheelchair could also benefit from this. You made it happen. That was really, really powerful. I want to ask you, Caroline, we've talked about the total release experience tool. Are there other tools that you have that we can benefit from as well?
I do have my well-being cards.
Please show. Oh, nice.
Bucket love. And these are great for children, great for families, fun for one or all the family. 31 cards, and each one of them, if you can see, is an activity that if done in 5 minutes can make us feel good. So imagine if you had a family of children and it was like the celebrate card got pulled. On the back of each card there's a quote: buckets love to be celebrated. Whether you pat yourself on your shoulders, hug yourself, acknowledge and celebrate that your bucket has done for you. That's great. But imagine with a little one, you can say, do you know what? We're going to celebrate the fact that you read that book all the way through without any mistakes. Or you tidied up your bedroom without asking. And celebrate that. Even in a classroom with children, imagine if a child got a round of applause for his great piece of work. How that would make them feel good. So then we've got chakras, we've got rest, we've got nutrition, and coming back to nutrition and exercise. When the pain's gone out the joints and the body feels looser and freer, exercise becomes easier. When we've got rid of the need for those addictive substances, whether that's food, alcohol, anything else, we've got a lady that recently, she does nothing else but her releasing, but she said, I've now turned a corner and I'm no longer binge eating. Her body has said, no more of this, you don't need it, and she just doesn't need it. Then the nutrition becomes important and we start to get it. So all of those aspects of our well-being are key. Same with meditation. It's so easy when you release to just slip into quiet meditative state. And that's the joy. So with all of these cards, breathing is so important. But that's what these are. Dance, music, sing, they're all in here. All things that, go for a walk, talking is important. And it's incredible. Oh, clear clutter's in there. And one business lady said to me, I pulled clear clutter from my pack on Saturday and I blitzed my office. She said, I had been looking at that for months on end and I cannot believe that a card had to tell me what to do.
I love that because, one of the things that I'm a very big fan of is, I don't know that Marie Kondo's book, Spark Joy, just clearing your space in a very intentional way. And I just love that that's part of the activities in your card. That's beautiful. And, you know, as you say, we know these things, but we just forget. So it's great that you have this, you know, it's a fun activity that just reminds you and says, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. And you said some of the things that were really powerful, Caroline. You said that this activity actually helps you get into a state where you're relaxed enough to actually be able to be more meditative, more open, more intuitive, which is extremely powerful when you are a leader, right? When you're head of the pack, you download, you're open to downloading things as opposed to, you know, figuring it out for years. Then another thing that you said that was really powerful was that you encourage connection. There is that tendency sometimes to be a lone wolf, to do things on your own, not to have time for relationships, family, love, which is so important, right? And I love what you said about your client who's stopped binge eating, and nutrition is now something different. So what I heard was nutrition is no longer just some form of a crutch. It is now nourishing, right? You
Yes.
talked about helping you breathe. Many people don't realize to what extent a lack of oxygen or having suboptimal levels of oxygen actually affects the ability to think properly, right? And you said another thing, which is that now that these clients have done the releasing and the shaking, that movement is no longer a pain, it is now invigorating. So I think that, you know, anyway, I'm definitely going to be booking myself a shaking session for sure. Because I'm just like, ooh.
Well, you know, and then the one thing that is so important, the program itself is powerful. It's just 4 modules with the education, the same practice, but extended lengths up to the maximum of 30 minutes once a week.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're left with all the tools, but you have to make that appointment with self, because we've heard those cliches, those quotes, always do what you've always done. You'll always get what you've always got. If we want change, we have to manifest it ourselves. Nobody's going to do it for us. And that is so important. I love the quote that, you know, my book, Feel It to Heal It, and there's the psoas muscle. Look, you can see that running down the back body. You can't get to it. But, you know, there's a quote in here that I share. Okay, so the first quote is, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And I love that, because we're all happy in our comfort zone. I don't want to do anything that steps me out of the norm, because I know that I'm safe where I am, even if it is uncomfortable. And then there's a quote that was chosen by Professor Turnbull. You have to leave the city of your comfort zone and go into the wilderness of your intuition. What you'll discover will be wonderful. What you'll discover is yourself. And that so fits with our shining diamond. You know, get out of your way, do what nature gave. That's innate, natural, and incredibly empowering and powerful.
Wow.
And then the magic happens.
Well, Caroline, I could not think of a better way to leave the phenomenal ladies. You've just said something extremely powerful. What you will discover is yourself. And that's what the summit is about rekindling that powerful feminine essence, right? And going into the wilderness of our intuitions and leaving the comfort of the ego and the intellect and all of those things that we know our experience, right? And so, Caroline, I cannot wait for the phenomenal ladies to reach out to you. Your email, your contact details will definitely be in the email they'll be receiving with this. And I know you have a beautiful gift, and I'll let them discover that when they receive this mail. And I thank you for your time. I know you're busy saving the world and serving the world. And so I'm very grateful that you took the time so generously today to come and talk and share. I appreciate it.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Bolutiwi, because we're living in a world that's got no solution. And so any opportunity to share a message to say, hey, don't give up.
Yes.
You got one thing left to try.
And I'm sure those ladies are smart. They heard you and they will. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you so much.
Thank you.